My name is Jody Emery. I'm the wife of Mark Emery, the Prince of Pot, and I'm the owner of Cannabis Culture Magazine, Pot TV, Cannabis Culture Headquarters Store, and the BCMP. And I'm also a candidate in the upcoming provincial election with the BC Green Party in Vancouver West End. The money to be made from marijuana is because of its illegality. So Mark and I both believe, as do many others, that marijuana, once legalized in any way, needs to come down in price, because we need to undercut the gangs, we need to undercut the people who are selling it at 10 bucks a gram. We need to be able to compete with lower prices and bring it out of the illegal market and into a legal market where its value would be much reduced because it's no longer risky to deal with it.
I think if we're going to do it in British Columbia, it's not going to come from the top down. I don't think any of our political leaders are willing to champion this cause right now. So we're going to have to do it here in BC the same way they did it in Washington and Colorado, which is through a ballot initiative and a referendum.
So we think you should just tax it like anything else. You got your GST, your PST. You know, if you're going to grow it or have a business selling it, we believe that you should be allowed to go into business producing and selling marijuana to recreational and medical users. But we also believe that you need to participate in the legal market framework that exists if it's going to be brought into that. So taxes would come from employment and business taxes and all that sort of regular stuff we deal with every day and all other business aspects. So marijuana should just be brought into that and reduced in price.
The people of British Columbia are ready for change. It's an issue whose time has come, and I hope that our political leaders would just move forward and pass this on their own accord because there's such broad public support for it. But I still think we're going to have a referendum in British Columbia to really make this happen. And if we succeed in that, marijuana will be decriminalized in British Columbia.
Do you have any idea off the top of your head, I mean, what kind of money we could be talking about as far as revenue generation goes on a per annum basis?
Well, it's really hard to say because right now every number we throw out dealing with the cannabis issue, it's all just guesswork. Because it's illegal, we really don't know what the value is. But based on what police can tell us and what we're trying to figure out with the Fraser Institute and so many others looking at the value of the marijuana industry, we realize it's enormous.
There was a recent study that showed about a $500 million revenue benefit for the province of British Columbia with a fully legalized marijuana system. It's very hard to estimate because the size of the underground market is not fully understood. The amount of tax we'd put on it is sort of difficult to really estimate properly. There's also a lot of other things, like for instance, I sell marijuana at my medical marijuana dispensaries. A lot of our patients forego subsidized pharmaceutical drugs, which are paid for by taxpayers, so they can use medical marijuana products. So if medical marijuana was more widely available, we could see a saving to taxpayers in terms of the cost of pharmaceutical substances. There's also a cost to taxpayers in terms of when someone gets a criminal record for possession as a youth, their earning potential and their ability to be a fully engaged citizen in our democracy is limited. And there's a dollar value to that cost that goes to all of us. So there's other little things like that that also need to be reflected.
It's one of the top industries in British Columbia right now. It creates so many jobs, and a lot of jobs that aren't even related to marijuana itself. You've got people who build the houses, you've got people who sell the fancy cars to the people who have the money that they got from growing in their basement. You've got hydroponic stores and all sorts of people, restaurants, banks, everybody is connected to this industry. It goes out into every other part of business. So we're talking about billions and billions of dollars right now that are being generated from growing and selling marijuana. And again, the price should be less if we put it in a legal market, but that's still a lot of money, and many people out there would be happy to go to a store, pay the taxes on it, and have safe access instead of having to know that they're supporting an underground market. Well, unfortunately for us here in Canada, our drug laws are federal and they're enforced because they're federal. So across the board, we all have to deal with the same drug laws. The U.S. has a special thing going on where they're allowed to vote in each state on changing their laws, dealing with pretty much any issue. So that's why you have 18 medical marijuana states. You have, I think, 14 states with decriminalization, and now you have 2 states with legalization. So there's a huge amount of interesting legislation going on down in the U.S. because they're allowed to do that and have different laws in each state.
We're talking about several $100 million a year. Most of that's just going to go into general revenue. It would allow us to reduce the PST, or it would allow us to provide more services, or there's a lot of ways that money would certainly benefit. I can't see any government turning down several $100 million a year in new revenue.
We are allowed to tell our police how to enforce a law provincially, but we can't tell them to ignore a federal law that they are required to enforce. So there's this sneaky little referendum issue we can use here, and the HST was repealed through that, and I think we can probably look at decriminalization of a sort under that same sort of system. But it's very difficult to do, and I think what we need is our provincial politicians to introduce that same sort of legislation into government here and have them vote on it, and the people would support it. We know 75% of British Columbia wants legal marijuana. I think most of them would say, yeah, let's take decrim for now and then work on getting the federal government to endorse a legal system in dealing with marijuana.